Well, Ukraine, Russia, China, all major topics in the leaked Pentagon documents. And while the extent of the damage caused by the leaked U.S. intel may never be fully known, we're learning some alarming new details about the accused leaker, Jack Teixeira, a 21-year-old Massachusetts Air National Guardsman. So let's bring in now NewsNation national security contributor, former CIA officer, as well as FBI Special Agent Tracy Walder. Tracy, thank you so much for being with us. So
Thank you for having me, Nicole.
there's a lot of disturbing details coming out now in court. Prosecutors allege Teixeira had an arsenal of guns at his home, that he had previously said online that he wanted to, quote, kill a lot of people. He also allegedly said he wanted to make a minivan a, quote, assassination van. We know he'd been suspended from school just a few years ago because, again, he's 21 years old. He was suspended for threats and comments he had made. So based on the facts, not even the allegations, how does someone like this receive clearance to top secret documents?
Well, Nicole, you did an excellent job of laying all that out. The reality is he absolutely should not have. And I've even seen some reporting of him talking about how he did declare on his SF-86, which is the form that you must fill out in order to obtain a security clearance. It's over 100 pages long. He did admit to failing to obtain a firearms permit in 2018 and 2019 because of the incidences that happened at his school. That should have been a non-starter right there. But for some reason, that really was quite frankly overlooked. Those background investigations go back anywhere from about 3 to 10 years. So given his age, they absolutely would have seen his high school discipline record.
Yeah, we're taking a look at some of those inventory photos right there as we speak, Tracy. So something else, prosecutors are alleging he frequently searched through these classified documents, sometimes on a daily basis. So based on your knowledge, I mean, shouldn't that have raised some type of red flag? I cannot imagine there is any reason he would have needed to have access to these documents daily.
You're absolutely right. You know, mine was monitored, quite frankly, when I worked at CIA. And if I was searching things that I shouldn't search, it really does kind of trigger a secondary security review. And to be honest, he was also searching things that were, quite frankly, even more suspect. He was searching school shootings, he was searching Uvalde, all on his government computer. And really, what that should have done was tipped off the security team to basically start asking questions. It creates what's called a security referral. And there are people that's what they do is monitor that internet behavior. And so I don't know where the ball was dropped there, but it absolutely would have kicked in a security referral based on what he was searching.
Yeah, it certainly seems like some type of ball was dropped here. Tracy, there are concerns that he may actually have more documents, and if he does, that those could be valuable to hostile states, or the information that he currently has could be valuable to these hostile states. So those are reasons prosecutors, some of the reasons prosecutors want him to remain behind bars where he currently is. But kind of looking at this from another perspective, is it potentially safer for him to remain in jail because of this information that he may or may not possess? And what does that mean for his family and for their property?
You know, that's a great question, Nicole. I think that you can look at it two ways. I do think you're right. If he is released, might he have a target on his back from foreign adversaries in terms of trying to recruit him to come work with him? Or from, Americans that are just angry, as well as, any threats that his family could have. Look, I do think there is no way that we can definitively say that he has no more classified information. There's just no way. And I also think it's really difficult for him to prove that he had no intent to disseminate that information, which is what he's trying to do. I do think the best place for him right now is behind bars, both for his safety and because there is just no way that we can determine that he doesn't have access to more classified information.
Well, last question for you, Tracy. We're always so reactionary. We want to try to be proactive. How do we best stop something like this, something like he's alleged to have done, from happening yet again?
Thank you so much for asking that question. One of the things that I've really discovered, and even reflecting on my own security process, is the questions that they're asking you are very much about how you can be a target for foreign entities to recruit you. We're not really looking at people's domestic activity, and that is something that needs to be looked at more. Also, there's really not deep dives by the government being done into social media. A lot of private companies do that, but the government is not doing that. And we need to start doing that more because it's becoming much more prolific. And quite frankly, it's leaving a better imprint of what someone's life is.
Well, Tracy Walter, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.